This trip I've been anticipating for several months is upon us. It's September 10th, and we're heading to the Shenandoah Valley.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. Going places that I've never been. Seeing things that I...
And our first stop here is at the Palms Restaurant in Emmitsburg, Maryland, for a breakfast date with my bride. Originally, we were going to have a date at the old South Mountain Inn outside of Emmitsburg. And then we decided to have a date at the restaurant in Emmitsburg. They were closed. So here we are at McDonald's. So far I'm way ahead of budget.
Awesome. And far beyond time.
So Amy gave me an escort out of town to breakfast. Now she's gone back home and I'm on my own. A couple hundred miles of solo biking ahead of me. Okay, we're starting our climb up the Blue Ridge. Gonna be crossing South Mountain at Blue Ridge Summit. Won't be the biggest climb I'm on this trip, but 1,000-foot climb, 10 miles into a trip with a heavy load ain't nothing to sneeze at. So I'm gonna go put it into my granny gear and start huffing and puffing.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. The life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again. And I can't wait to get on the road again.
On July 4th, 1863, exactly one day after the Battle of Gettysburg, Union and Confederate troops fought here as the Confederate Army of trains and supplies and wounded men were retreating to get back to Virginia. There's about 10,000 soldiers engaged here. The battle occurred overnight for about 6 hours, from about 10 p.m. until daybreak, through a horrific thunderstorm. I can only imagine what the madness and confusion and chaos must have been like. And now I just rode up to Blue Ridge Summit here at Monterey Pass, and I'm pretty gassed. I can't imagine 157 years ago what it must have been like for those men to fight for 3 days in the heat of July, wearing long woolen uniforms, tens of thousands of casualties, and then forced to march back to Virginia, only to be ambushed in the middle of a thunderstorm at night after climbing a mountain. It must have been utter hell. So, no skirmishes here today, but I am about to go assault a peanut butter and jelly bagel because I'm hungry. Google Maps had lost its mind because I was on a nice, really sweetly paved state highway with a nice wide shoulder, and then it sent me off, and now I'm riding on this, which is gravel, quite loose in some places. It's okay because I guess I'm coming into the backside of Antietam battlefield, and these woods right here are where some of the Union soldiers camped. the night before the battle. I've ridden through miles and miles of beautiful rolling farmland today. Peaceful, tranquil. But a century and a half ago, that wasn't the case. I'm standing here now in what's called a sunken road, worn down from generations of farm traffic through the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. 157 years ago this week, however, this wasn't a farming lane. This was actually a foxhole for a Confederate line. During the Civil War, there were 675,000 casualties from both sides combined. 20,000 of those casualties occurred in the few acres surrounding where I am now. Of those 20,000, over 5,000 of those casualties were in the sunken road, which I'm standing in now. The name of that sunken road was forever changed to Bloody Lane, for good reason. The official count is 675,000 soldiers killed, wounded, or missing during the Civil War. The numbers are staggering. In the land around here, you can just sense the solemnness. Killed is pretty self-explanatory. Missing, well, some of those boys may have deserted, no doubt. Many others were just so brutally ravaged on the battlefield that they were unrecognizable and basically didn't show up for the next roll call, but never really identified. So many of those so-called missing are actually dead. The wounded number is very misleading. When a soldier back in the Civil War had his arm or leg mangled by a mini ball or shell or whatever, the common practice was to amputate, and by that I mean saw it off. And so while a soldier had a 65% chance of surviving an amputation, he only had a 10% chance of surviving if an infection set in after the amputation. So many of those counted as wounded really ended up dead as well. Another thing I learned that I'd pretty much known, but it was just driven home, and now I'm confident of this fact without a doubt, and that is that the Civil War wasn't, at least initially, about slavery. That's a pretty unpopular notion today, and when you espouse that notion, people will sometimes accuse you of, rewriting history or glamorizing it. And the fact of the matter is there's no indication to think that the Civil War started over slavery. The vast majority of the soldiers fighting for the Confederate cause did not own slaves. And I don't know about you, but I would certainly not fight like those men fought for something that they didn't even have the benefit of. It wasn't about slavery until after the battle in Sharpsburg. We know it as the Battle of Antietam. Again, the most objective sources will call that battle a draw. Sources favorable to the North will say it was a Federal victory, simply because while both sides lost the same number of men, the Lee and his army then retreated back across the Potomac into Virginia. So they left the battlefield first, so the Yankees often claimed that as a victory. The truth of the matter is that perhaps the Yankees survived that battle more than the Confederates, and so Lincoln used that opportunity. You know, he was a politician, and as one politician said a few years ago, he didn't want to let any crisis go without taking advantage of it. So he used the opportunity of at least the perceived victory at Antietam to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. And so then the war became about freeing the slaves. But it really wasn't until then, until Lincoln made it so. It was a war for independence. You know, 80 some years earlier, our country had fought a war for independence. At that point, it was a independence against England, independence from England. And this Confederacy was fighting, again, a war of independence. They wanted to let the states kind of run their own thing. And they were against, a centralized government. It's funny, here we are 150 years later, and some things haven't changed. There's still this battle of power between the central federal government and states' rights. And there are many things that are the same, but I don't think we're on the brink of civil war, because quite frankly, in the 21st century, most of us are too fat and happy to disrupt our lives in that way. So while we complain about it, perhaps, or there's the talk show people that on both sides of the aisle that, pontificate, the fact of the matter is that life is pretty good here in America, and we don't really want to mess that up for the most part. This is the first time seeing this campsite, as it was totally dark when I got home last night, but we're on the C&O Canal, right beside the Potomac River here. That felt great. Okay, well, we're day 2 here on our great Shenandoah Valley adventure. Had a nice night by myself on the C&O Canal last night. Took a nice bath in the Potomac River this morning. And got a little warm up here along the C&O Canal towpath, nice and flat, a little bumpy, but nice and flat. And I don't know, 6, 7, 8 miles, something like that. And then we get to breakfast in Shepherdstown, and then head south into the Shenandoah Valley. No idea where I'll end up tonight. It's supposed to be pretty hot, well into the 90s. So we'll see how it goes. Talk to you soon. Well, this is quite embarrassing. I'm riding down the C&O Canal and somehow I missed Shepherdstown. It's a huge highway bridge going over the canal and the river here with a spiral ramp, and somehow I didn't see it and I overshot it by 2 miles. So I'm going to turn around and ride the road back and see if I can get to breakfast here.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
Coming into West Virginia, people.
Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home.
I'm on the road between Shepherdstown and Winchester. Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's in the low 100s on the bike. Pretty brutal, burning through a lot of water. It's beautiful countryside though. Very rural, rolling farmland. There's a big farm here across the street from me. There's corn right in front of me here, and I've seen soybeans and whatnot, and some of the rockier fields contain livestock, cattle, horses, bulls. Saw some bulls for sale. There's some Holsteins across the way here. Here you can see the corn behind me. But I'm about 10 miles from Winchester. I'm looking forward to getting there and getting inside somewhere, cooling off, seeing some sights, and just kind of letting the heat of the day pass, and then I'll do a few more miles in the late afternoon, get a little further south here. So anyhow, that's the report from the road. Well, I made it to Winchester and checked out some Civil War stuff. I haven't had anything to eat since Shepherdstown. It was too hot to eat, but now I'm dehydrated, starving. We've had some thunderstorms roll through, drop the temperature about 20 or 30 degrees. I'm looking at the Roma Old Town wood-fired pizzeria. It's about, well, let me show you. It's right there. I'm gonna go have dinner there. After riding all day and heat over 100 degrees, it's important to rehydrate.
I was in the land of cotton, old time there, I'm not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixie's land where I was born in early on one frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland.
Well, this was my campsite last night, much needed. After the brutal day of riding in 100-degree heat. It's about 9:30 in the morning right now, or 8:30 in the morning. I'm already sweating. It's going to be another toasty one. But this little refuge last night got me back to 100%, got me cleaned up, and I got a gallon of water with me, and I've adjusted my riding plan to take into account the heat. And on a bonus, it looks like we're going to have a slight tailwind today, so that won't hurt. And anyhow, we'll see what the road has for us. Well, it's amazing how fast one's plans can change. I've made it all of probably not even a quarter mile, and it appears something's up with my derailleur here. And I don't know if you can see that tiny little chip right there, but my guess is that is evidence of where I hit it while hauling my bike up to my second-story motel room last night. That's the bad news. The good news is that it happened before I left Winchester, and therefore I was only about a mile from this place. The bad news is that they don't open till 10, which is in about an hour. And the good news is it's on the shady side of the street.
misses and the gals that want to kiss us. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. And if you want to drive away sorrow, come and hear our song tomorrow. Look away, look away, look away.
So good news, Logan here at the bike shop hooked me up. He got my derailleur hanger straightened back out. He trued my rear wheel, adjusted my shifters, and tightened my rear hub, all for 30 bucks, and it's not even 10:30 yet. So great stop. We had some great conversation. So we're into a great day. Well, one of the blessings of having the mechanical trouble I did today is I got to come back and get the rest of the Stonewall Jackson headquarters tour. I was here just before closing last night and just got to see the downstairs, and it was fascinating by then, but because of my delay this morning, I was here at about 10:30 and got the, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. If you're ever in Winchester, this is well worth the $5 tour. Okay, so it's about 1 o'clock and I've ridden only about 5 miles. I'm still in Winchester. It's been a very eventful day though. I ate lunch here at this hole-in-the-wall little Hispanic restaurant. Great burrito. I got to watch these guys pave the road while I was enjoying my breakfast. Got a lead on a good campsite with a swimming hole about 25 miles from here. So that's where I'm heading with the wind at my back. It's hot as Hades, but it's a good day.
Well, I wish I was in the land of coffee, in old town there. I'm not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away.
Not something you see on the side of the road every day.
I was born in early on one frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Then I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixie's land I'll take my stand, live and die in Dixie, away, 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 down south of Dixie, away.
Boy, if I had $1 for every time my mom told me this as a kid, well, I'd be broke. Based on the parking lot, I'd say this attraction is gonna go the way of the dinosaurs.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch no bandit run. Keep your foot hard on the pedal, son, never mind them brakes. Let it all hang out, cause we got a run to make. The boys are thirsty in Atlanta, and there's beer in Texarkana, and we'll bring it back no matter what it takes. Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch old bandit run.
After another day of dangerously hot temperatures, it's time for some rehydration once I get into camp. Last night it was oral rehydration. Today we're going with the full body osmosis hydration.
Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound, just watch old bandit run. Old Smokey's got them ears on, he's hot on your trail. He ain't gonna rest till you're in jail. So you got to dodge him, you got to duck him, you gotta keep that diesel trucking. Just put that hammer down and give it hell. Eastbound and down, load it up and truck it. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound up, watch old bandit run.
One serious firewood operation. So sometimes you got to get creative when it's raining. I've been going through beautiful farm country for the last couple hours, but I needed a break and need to get some food in me, but there's been a steady mist all day since I left Front Royal. So I'm probably about 10 or 15 miles from my destination, and I came across this bridge, and so here we are underneath the bridge, out of the weather, having a break. Not the most scenic rest stop I've ever had, but pretty cool nonetheless. I need to get your sleep lines.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think I have this.
For the movie. Motion picture coming soon.
See,
You mean trying to do like some
family
like
work
crazy
that-
flip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Before and after videos.
I was like, no. Actually,
I'm not taking your word on this.
So, I'm on day 5 here. It's early in the day. Well, I stayed at the Victoria's till noon. So it's not early in the day, but it's early in the ride of the day. But so far, this is looking like the best day. Most pleasant day of riding. The heat of a couple days ago is gone. The mountains of the hills of the Blue Ridge are behind me. Which way are we turning here? Please don't tell me I'm turning right. I have to look at the map. But anyhow, you can see the roads are relatively pleasant, flat, and I've had 2 days of driving on highways with no shoulder. We're back on backcountry roads. It's pleasantly warm, around 80 couple degrees, and no rain. It's dry. The wind isn't in my face. It's not 110 degrees out. The hills are short. Life is good. So just as I filmed that last clip, Google Maps took me down this gravel road. So I don't mean to say that the ride today is easy street. It will have its unique challenges, just like any ride does. But didn't want you guys thinking that I was getting fat and lazy. As I kind of expected, this Civil War tour, it was extremely educational. I live up near Gettysburg, and so I think that we live in a place that is surrounded by Civil War history. And to a degree that's true. The people that lived here 150, 160 years ago, the war didn't come to visit them. It lived there.
when you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in.
And this is the point where Generals Lee and Jackson met for the very last time. They spent the night of May 1st, 1863 here, and Jackson met briefly with Lee on the morning of May 2nd as he went off to flank the Union forces a couple miles from here. Later that evening, he was mortally wounded by friendly fire, where he later died a week later. Chancellorsville was Lee's last great victory for the Confederate Army of Virginia. You might say he won the battle but lost the war here.
When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard,
I think I'm coming up to my campsite.
Your destination is on the right.
Yeah, there it is.
When darkness comes.
So this is my one luxurious night of the trip. My campground involves a king-size bed, and I'm really psyched to get cleaned up and just pass out.
Troubled water, I will lay me down. The rock of our salvation. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all of the ground is sinking sand. The rock won't move, the rock won't move.
The rock won't move. The rock won't move. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move.
And hopefully we will leave here today committed to embracing God's Sabbath design in our lives so that we can experience His presence and His faithfulness and His goodness in our lives. So we got to understand that as God was creating this world, the physical world and universe, He was also creating the concept of time for us. He designated what a day means, right? The sun rises, the sun sets, we have a day. And He also designated what we call a week, right? We have 7 days in our week because of Genesis. God created on 6 days. He could have just gone back to day 1 after that, and we'd have a 6-day week, right? And our calendars would look different because there would only be 6 squares in the week, right? But He didn't. God added a 7th day to the formula for a week. And this 7th day was different than the other 6. And that, by definition, helps us understand what a Sabbath means. That a Sabbath must be different than the other days of our week. But beyond that, the difference extends beyond the activities that God did. Because verse 3 of Genesis 2 tells us that God made the day holy. He declared it holy. And that it should be designated for Him. And so a Sabbath day has to be designated for God. It's different in its activity, and it's different in its focus and designation, that it's for God. In some ways, the Sabbath is the same today as it always has been. It is still a gift from God. It is still to be a day that is meant to bless us, to give us rest, to be a part of our enjoyment in this life. God wants it to be a good thing that we look forward to and are excited about. And being faithful to follow God does not require relentless effort. But being faithful involves rest. It means taking a day off and resting in Him.
This is my bedroom for the night. It's very fancy.
Rock, I stand all of the ground is sinking sand. The rock won't move. The rock won't move. And when darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move. The rock won't move, and His word is strong. The rock won't move, and His love can't be undone. The rock won't move, and His word is strong. The rock won't move, and His love can't be undone.
Listen, I've traveled every road in this here land. I've been everywhere, man.
It's about 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, and this is what the local people have to deal with. My road's on the far left here. Clear sailing. Manassas on July 21st, 1861 became the first major battle of the Civil War. At the time of the first Battle of Manassas, the 5,000 casualties, of which about 20% were actually killed, that was the deadliest battle in American history. That record wasn't to stand for very long, unfortunately. And that battle, unfortunately, centered around a homestead, a farmstead of an 84-year-old widow named Mrs. Henry. The battle took place on Henry's Hill, as it's now known. And unfortunately, the North fired upon her home because they found that there was Confederate snipers hiding out in and around the home. What they didn't realize is that Mrs. Henry was in the home as well. And so she became the first civilian casualty of the Civil War, but far from the last. And what this trip taught me, and I hadn't really thought about it before because, like I said, I live in a place where the war came to visit. But what the trip taught me is that the people that lived in Northern Virginia in the 1860s, whether they had sons or fathers or brothers that were fighting for the cause or not, they were all casualties of war. I mean, there was tens and hundreds of thousands of soldiers marching all over the countryside here, and that was messy, and that's a lot of food that those people have to eat. So just marching through a town would likely wipe out the food and supplies. And of course, if you were unfortunate enough to live in a place where a battle was fought, forget about it. Your crops were destroyed. Your home might be burned, intentionally or unintentionally. your whole livelihood that you've worked all year for, maybe your whole life for, could be wiped out in a few violent hours. And you know, it wasn't like you could file a claim with the government and they would reimburse you for your losses. The federal government did have that a little bit, but it wasn't very effective, because of course they didn't have a whole lot of money with the war effort going on. You know, it wasn't like you could go down to the grocery store and restock your pantry. It wasn't like you could work a couple extra shifts at the, you know, or get a second job to get some overtime to recover financially. I don't know, honestly, how people did it back then, just being wiped out. And even after the war ended in 1865, it was a long, gruesome process. It was just very sobering to think about that. This doesn't look like much, but this old road was where on July 21st, 1861, Stonewall Jackson and his troops emerged onto the battlefield.
Then when we first begun.
It was at about this point where General B of South Carolina looked up and saw General Jackson on his horse and said to his men who were faltering at the time, "There stands Jackson like a stone wall. Rally behind the Virginians, men." General B didn't know he just given the most famous military nickname in American history, for he would not survive the day. The artist who built this statue took some liberties with it. First of all, the horse that Jackson rode was actually his wife's, and it was a pony, Little Sorrel. It's only 14 hands tall. Big Sorrel was his horse, but was gun shy. The second artistic license the artist took was General Jackson was about 6 feet tall, but weighed only about 160 pounds or so. The man on this horse is kind of built like Superman. And finally, the battle at First Bull Run took place on July 21st. The man on this horse is wearing his winter cape, and while it definitely goes with the Superman appearance, Jackson would not have been wearing this on July 21st.
That saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
There's something to be said for doing some night riding. It's so peaceful. Some music playing, crickets chirping. It's kind of bizarre taking this ferry at night. We're moving, but I can't tell we're moving unless I look, and I can see the landscape moving. It's totally calm, totally dark. It's pretty wild. I'm about to hit the other side.
So
my final day on the road. Got a few miles on the C&O Canal and then I head up to Frederick. It's been a wonderful journey. Well, I'm sitting here right by the Monocacy Aqueduct where the C&O Canal goes over that aqueduct. This is the mouth of Monocacy, and just around the bend is where the Monocacy River empties into the Potomac. It's been good to get away from my daily responsibilities and just truly have a week-long Sabbath. There wasn't a single day that was easy riding, whether it was the heat, the hills, the miles, the wind, the rain, or some combination of the above. There was no day that was easy. But the people that I've come across have just been real people. And here we are coming down Patrick Street in downtown Frederick. Last stop, Civil War stop on the tour. So I'm less than 25 miles from home now, and I couldn't think of any better way to end this trip than a sandwich and a milkshake from Chick-fil-A. And my cover is officially blown. I saw two people I know here. I'm at the Chick-fil-A in North Frederick, so I guess I do have to show up at work tomorrow, but I was planning to anyhow. The battle I know most about, of course, is Gettysburg because of where I live. And I gotta say, we've really romanticized that battle. It's this glorious clash of titans, like two heavyweight boxers late in the round that just they're exhausted and they just throw everything they have at one another. And as a gentleman said to me yesterday, the Yankees didn't win that battle, they survived it. And we romanticize it. It changed the tide of the war in favor of the North, and it was just a matter of time before they won the whole war. And you know, we think of the 50 some odd thousand casualties, killed, wounded, or missing, but they died as heroes, and all that's true, and I don't want to take away from it, but my trip through the countryside of Northern Virginia painted a much starker picture. War is not romantic, and certainly not back then. It was pretty barbaric. You know, it's hard to imagine in the 21st century taking up arms against the United States as an American. I can't imagine that I would do that. But the Civil War didn't take place in the 21st century. It took place in the 19th century. And if you think about it, things were a lot more decentralized. The world was a lot bigger back then. You know, if you were born wherever you were born, you may spend your whole life in a 20 or 30 or maybe, if you're well traveled, a 50-mile radius of your home. And so, for example, Virginians identified themselves as Virginians first before Americans. And that's why Robert E. Lee, when he was asked to command the Union Army to put down the rebel insurrection in the South, he told Lincoln that he couldn't take up arms against his family and his neighbors. And it's hard for us to kind of fathom that now because our world is so much smaller and we travel. And you know, I was born in Maryland and I live in Pennsylvania, and my parents were born in Ohio and they lived in Maryland, and I've lived in Vermont and Indiana and California. I've been all over this country, and so I identify it as a country. But that wasn't the case back then. People identified with, they were loyal to the state of their birth, and that's hard for us to fathom in this day and age. But when you really think about it and think about the society and culture at that time, it's pretty understandable why so many men fought and fought hard, fought in the face of certain death to defend their own freedom. Heading home now.
When it's time for leaving, I hope you'll understand that I was born a rambling man. My father was
Well, it's been 8 days, 4 states, 6 battlefields, 350 miles. And now home sweet home.
Hey porter, would you tell me the time? How much longer will it be till we cross that Mason-Dixon line? At daylight, would you tell that engineer to slow it down? Or better still, just stop the train, 'cause I want to look around. Hey porter, what time did you say? How much longer will it be till I can see the light of day? When we hit Dixie, will you tell that engineer to ring his bell and ask everybody that ain't asleep to stand right up and yell? Hey porter, it's getting light outside. This old train is puffing smoke and I have to strain my eyes. But ask that engineer if he will blow his whistle, please, 'cause I smell frost on cotton leaves and I feel that southern breeze. Hey porter, please get my bags for me. I need nobody to tell me now that we're in Tennessee. Go tell that engineer to make that lonesome whistle scream. We're not so far from home, so take it easy on the steam. Hey porter, please open up the door. When they stop this train, I'm gonna get off first, 'cause I can't wait no more. Tell that engineer I said thanks a lot and I didn't mind the fare. I'm gonna set my feet on southern soil and breathe that southern air.